I had no idea that the luxury brands burned their goods.
Oh my gosh, it was a really big thing for Burberry because what activists got involved. And they even footnoted it on one of their public market filings. And so then they had to really rethink. I mean, the activists really came after them. They had to issue an apology. It hurt their brand. So that's an interesting thing. So think about it. Sustainability doesn't necessarily add to the brand, but doing something really negative on the environment does hurt the brand if it's exposed.
Do you ever feel like you just over obsess over like the tiniest detail and you can't understand why those around you aren't as obsessed about it as you are? Well, you just might have a place as a leader in business because you know what? I'm all for it. I am Shawn D. Nelson, host of the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. We are going to talk about the idea of dominating through details on today's podcast. And I think you're going to be blown away by our guest, the founder of the Real, multi-billion-dollar organization, but she proves why she has been a serial entrepreneur from the outset. She began on an assembly line when she was young and took it through college as an executive in one of the biggest companies in America that led her to be one of the first voices in e-commerce. And in this podcast, we'll get into just the impressive daily operations at Real, right? This is the biggest resale company in the world now. How she started an industry around resale for luxury items, but more importantly, why Julie has now become so disappointed in the way e-commerce has evolved. I come to this topic, dominate through details, through my own experience at Lovesac, just to share two quick examples. From the earliest days, from like the college days, I thought it would just be funny when we started making sacks for people to have a warning label because, it's a big sack of foam. How dangerous could it be? But you could Google the Lovesac warning label today and see people sharing it online because it's like the most ridiculous thing you've ever read from the earliest days, right? Everything about this sack resulted in injury or death, right? Failure to fluff your sack will result in injury or death. Failure to clean your sack is just gross. Don't smoke the foam in the sack. It may damage your political career. All these dumb warnings, which of course were ridiculous and stupid. And you'd have to flip up, the logo tag to find the warning label to even bother to read it. But if you did, it's going to make you laugh. And even question, we had some people like, how could you sell such a dangerous product? Look, it was just a funny detail to make people smile if they even bothered to read the warning label on a Lovesac, right? In the first Lovesac factory, we had this 14-foot table where we stuffed foam by hand. The hay buster shredder would dump foam onto this table, but we lined the table around the edge of it with leopard print velvet because we had, extra scraps of leopard print laying around from all the Lovesac's. And we just thought it'd be funny to like put this little finishing touch on the factory. And we also had to lean on this thing and lean over the wooden edge and stuff sacks. So it made it a little more comfortable for ourselves and our employees, our workers, that we worked alongside with. My point is, from the smallest details on your product to the details in your culture that make your factory a little more tolerable to live in, it's the willingness to go that extra mile, make the effort, focus on the details, and dominate ultimately through details, building a winning culture, building a winning product, building a product that's endearing to people. And I found it to be radically effective. So this conversation with Julie goes to all these places. I think you're going to love her example of a fantastic, relevant, big time entrepreneur that has spent her career dominating through details. Here we go. Today's guest is a powerhouse, a pioneer, a true connoisseur of the little things that make a big difference. This woman is the legendary founder and former CEO of the Real, the world's largest online luxury consignment platform, and a brand that revolutionized the way we think about resale, sustainability, and luxury shopping. All things that I am personally very passionate about at Lovesac. But she didn't just build a billion-dollar business. She did it by dominating through the details. From the authentication process to the unboxing experience, Julie has proven that it's not just the product that wins, it's the precision, the polish, the passion poured into every touch point. She's a masterclass in resilience, reinvention, and building brands that don't just succeed, they stand out. I am beyond excited today to introduce the one and only Julie Wainwright.
Oh my goodness, what an intro. I better live up to that. Hey, Shawn. Now I'm like squirming in my seat a little. That's great though.
You're going to crush. This is great. So look, without even thinking too hard about it, right? Today's topic, dominate through details. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you when you heard this?
So, and people may not realize how big the Real is, not in terms of revenue that's public, and the top line revenue as well, way over $1 billion. But what that means is hundreds of thousands of products had to come into the App Center every single month. And when I was there, the last number was over 800,000 unique products came in every single month. Now, and those are tied. So that means, I'll just give you another perspective. An average drugstore has maybe a really big one, 110,000 SKUs all year. That's all they have. And, most small stores have 30 to 60,000, but those are, and maybe they swap out 5,000. So the Real had to deal with 800,000 unique SKUs every month, and make sure it continued to grow. And all of those SKUs, those individual products, had to be tied to a consignor so that consignor can get paid. So already you've got this massive flow of product into the App Center. So talk about, that means that your database and your processes have to be brilliant. And when I was trying to get funding for the Real, people kept saying, you'll never be able to make the App Center work. It's too complicated. It's too hard. You'll never get it profitable. In fact, it is the most efficient part of the P&L. And that comes, so how do you do that? It gets down to the details. It gets down to big processes broken down to small processes, automating what you can. And then it impacts the whole organization, because without the right database design and tech department, everything falls apart. But without the right employee receiving the product correctly, it all falls apart. Without the right system or the flow of the product, it all falls apart. So, and the other thing is, we started using AI, and it's really being used now when I was there, because the other thing is there are patterns. So if you're thinking about authentication, guess what? Fraudulent consigners have patterns. So after a while, you can identify those patterns, and then you can run those potential fraudulent goods or fraudulent consigners' goods into a different swim lane. So the other thing you want to do is get your swim lanes cleaned, because at the end of the day, everything I'm talking about, the Real turns 90% of all products sell through in 3 months. So you've got to get things processed within 2.5 weeks. I think they're at 3 weeks now, because in fact, you don't want to keep adding warehouse space while you grow. You want to get it up on the site, and you want to actually have the ability to sell it through. Otherwise, let's say you're growing 10%, you're going to run out of space at some point. So you want to keep the product flowing all the time, which means your processes have to be tight, your technology has to be tight, your people have to be trained, and it has to work every single day like clockwork. So it is remarkable. But applying technology helped quite a bit, where you can take a picture, which automatically writes the copy, which then people check it. Even authentication for handbags can be done as a first pass, but not by itself. It's still not good enough to be done. So you then start changing your flow. I'd love to get you in one of the app centers to see it at some point. It would blow your mind, but it is all about details. It's all about details.
I mean, one of the things that Lovesac, and we're like embryos on this journey compared to you, but if you understand our products beyond even just the sacks, right? Which I know you're familiar with. That's awesome that
Yes, yes.
you
I
had.
was a buyer. I was a buyer before I knew who you were. Yes.
We sell mostly these Sactionals, sofas these days. Extremely modular furniture you can grow and add to forever. And what's unique about the product, of course, is that like this chair that I'm sitting on right now, this seat is 17 years old. Actually, it's wearing its 10th
Wow.
set of covers. It's mated with brand new pieces. It can be mated with Stealth Tech, our new products. And so the opportunity for us to provide trade in, trade up, as we launched, for instance, in just a month ago, the recliner, people can swap out the seat they already have for a recliner. It's huge. So we actually just got into the resale business ourselves, and we're uniquely suited to do that in the furniture category for all the reasons that you can imagine. When essentially, with Sactionals, you buy a bunch of seats that are identical, buy a bunch of sides, and with those you can build any couch you want, like Legos. So we have this unique ability that others don't have. But man, talk about a complex business to parachute into. And I would love to see one of your ops centers and learn from what you're doing, because we're pursuing it on first principles. We're pursuing it for a pursuit of sustainability. Tell us more about that.
Well, here's the interesting thing about sustainability. We didn't start off with that. We knew everything we were doing was sustainable, but I hate to say this, no one's going to buy something because it's sustainable. They're just
Yeah.
not. They're going to buy it because they love the product, it's a good price. And sustainable is a nice thing that makes people feel really good once they bought it. And it's core to what we do.
Yeah.
So we didn't talk about it for about 4 years, I think. But we did NPS scores regularly for customers. And then we'd also ask them brand attributes. They started telling us sustainability was important. And it was a factor, not the primary, but it was a good factor. So then we wanted to really understand and what that meant. And we hired data scientists and environmental scientists to help us quantify really what that meant. So, what's the real impact of buying something previously owned or consigning it? What does that do in terms of carbon offsets or water offsets? And that actually made people, then it sort of crystallized the real impact of it. And now it's a core foundation for the business, but we waited. We waited. I know companies during that time were trying to go out with sustainability as their primary driver, and people don't buy that. Now, that doesn't mean they don't want to be sustainable. It's just not a purchase motivator. It might be a repurchase and a motivator, and it certainly is a feel good factor. People feel good about doing anything that's good for the planet.
Yeah, I mean, I can validate the same thing. We've gone through a lot of the same research ourselves, and as we've polled our own customers and also just the general public, while a lot of people talk about sustainability, their actual buying decisions are not heavily influenced overall by it. At the same time, companies like yours and mine, that I heard it well said recently, in fact, as we've gone through a brand evolution with an agency, and one of the pieces of advice that I loved was, if you want to be super sustainable, just do it. Do the things that you believe in. But we don't lead with it either. In fact, we manufacture all of our upholstery fabric from recycled bottles. We barely talk about it, not because it's not important to us, but because frankly, it's not why people are going to buy our stuff. They're going to buy our stuff because it's a kid-proof, life-proof, cat-proof couch they can have the rest of your life and add to it and grow it. And that matters to them. And that from a first principle standpoint, I believe leverages their own self-interest, right? The self-interest that
Right.
you're
That's
harnessing,
right. Yep. That's
right?
exactly right.
Gucci brand for, a better price that's real and validated, right? And that's what's driving people. And the sustainability aspect, sadly, is less important. And so just being a realist in business is very important for entrepreneurs out there to know that while this has been a huge buzzworthy topic, it is not one that is a primary driver of business, at least in your and in my scaled businesses observation. So I think that's interesting.
That's right. And the fashion industry has flirted with sustainability, but they've only embraced it when the laws have forced them to embrace it.
Mm.
And in Europe, they have fairly strict laws. There's no burning of goods anymore. So, what it wasn't unusual for companies in the luxury space. They didn't want to discount their items, so they took their excess inventory and they burned it. So that's been
Wow.
prohibited in Europe. And now there are warehouses somewhere filling up with new product that they didn't want to discount to actually damage their brand. But in the US, we don't have those laws. In fact, the only place is Europe that has those laws. So the US, I wouldn't be surprised to know if people were burning their excess inventory. We don't have that, but only laws for sustainable thinking, and they're only in force in Europe right now.
I had no idea that the luxury brands burned their goods.
Oh my gosh, it was a really big thing for Burberry because what activists got involved, and they even footnoted it on one of their uh, filings, their public market filings. And so then they had to really rethink. I mean, the activists really came after them. And they were following the EU laws. Now, I don't know anymore if the UK, I don't know if they still adopted some of those laws. I bet they have. They're a more sustainable thinking nation. But the activists came after them. They had to issue an apology. It hurt their brand. So that's an interesting thing. So think about it. Sustainability doesn't necessarily add to the brand, but doing something really negative on the environment does hurt the brand if it's exposed. So it's a fascinating two-sided conversation. You don't want to be caught burning up your clothing.
Absolutely. Well, and you also don't want to be caught greenwashing, which is really, the lion's share of sustainable activity out there is some form of greenwashing, some form of trying to take credit for being super sustainable or conscious when really sometimes the inverse is true. So that's really fascinating. I'm a big proponent of luxury goods, not just because my wife has convinced me in thinking that way, but also, so Lovesac began as this beanbag company, right, making these foam bags that people love and they last forever, at least until some animal ruins it or something, right? But as we evolved, we made our couches that way. We kind of made these things that could be, last a lifetime in their construction, but also could evolve as your life changed, right? You can change the fabric, you can change the style, you can rearrange it, do all these different things. And that led us to this design for life philosophy. And the reason that I bring it up is because at the heart of the design for life philosophy is this idea of things that are lasting. And I love the notion of buying better stuff so you can buy less stuff, which is really antithetical, to the whole fashion industry, which is always trying to compel us just to buy more, more, more. It's one reason I love Real and really the entire genre that you represent, that would have us still, give us greater access to really good stuff. Because in fairness, a lot of luxury goods are not just overpriced, branded whatever, but they're better.
Well, they are better. I mean, we the biggest advocate for sustainability, maybe the only advocate for sustainability in the fashion world besides the Real Real, was Stella McCartney and her brand.
Really?
And they are all about environmental. In fact, there's all kinds. This is becoming an environmental conversation, but it's really interesting. Like every second, a truckload of used clothing goes into a landfill. And I don't know if you know this, but most fast fashion is plastic. Polyester is plastics. It's responsible for like 35% of all the microplastics in the ocean,
Mm.
which means we're eating microplastics. So fast fashion's really, really dangerous. And Stella McCartney led the way. We did a campaign with her early on, and it shook up the whole industry because she was the first luxury brand to embrace the Real Real, and really the only one that embraced it wholeheartedly. And the campaign, the tagline was make well, buy well, resell. And that was, so she was the make well. And then obviously, they were like, we make our things really well. So people can buy something of quality, which gives you the ability to resale. Now, it's much better for the planet, but also all of our consigners do the math when they shop. So they're like, okay, I may spend, let's say, $800 for this, but I can resell it for $400. So I'm going to spend $400 for this. How many am I going to wear it a lot? Okay, great. Or worse yet, I'm not going to buy this brand because it has a declining resale value. It happens all the time. I used to be on calls with analysts and they'd say, I'm not going to mention the company, but it was a public company. This company believes you're damaging their brands because of the resale business. And I said, well, resale always supports the primary market. It's just, it happens. And I said, and we don't sell a lot of those products. We don't get a lot in. And I said, but I did check the pricing, and their resale price to their retail price, it's only 20%. And other people who have these type of handbags, it's 80%. So on that level, it probably is happening because people check the resale value before they buy. Because
which is a new consumer behavior, and one that
completely
you should feel really obviously proud to have compelled, because wow, right? Like imagine the auto industry without used cars. Like we wouldn't even think of it.
No, you couldn't. And even look, the watch industry, especially men's watches, people have been buying men's watches resale forever. But all right, now let's just talk about, you're talking about details though. So think about, you have to price 800,000 unique items every month. Wow. So that is not something humans can do, right? I mean, you could hire thousands of people, but what you can do is actually build a database that supports deep taxons. I hope I'm not getting too nerdy here.
No, I love it.
Okay, but if you set up your database properly with really deep taxons, as deep as you can go, therefore you're going to have something relative, and you're looking at your data. This is where data scientists come in and data engineers, and you know what in the last 90 days, what products with similar taxons sold at and how fast they sold. Then you can get an optimal price. And the first line of pricing can all be done on that. It always needs human oversight though, because there's always exceptions. Like there could be a very special bag that we just didn't have the taxon to capture. Or, and this is sort of sad, what if a designer died? As soon as the designer dies, the prices go way up for a while. So you have to look at what's going on in events, and then you have to look at extraordinary items and separate them out. And they all need some QA, but having that set up properly, and then you need all that compute power to make it happen. It's really sophisticated. So when you get into this and you start doing volume, this is why other people that have tried to get into the resale business en masse, unless you set it up right, you're never going to make money. It's too hard. You've got to automate it. Everything falls apart without automation and processes and thinking of the entire organization.
Well, I think what stands out to me as well, listening to you, first of all, I appreciate the detailed description. I think it's amazing to appreciate what was built. And I think, the message for any listeners out there thinking about their own businesses, thinking about potential opportunities, this is a day and age where more than ever, this kind of complexity is now available to us through the leveraging of AI. AI can do the work of programmer, of database engineer, and our ability as individuals or as teams to leverage AI in ways that when you were beginning with RealReal, you didn't even have access to.
Wasn't even on the map. Although machine learning's been with us for a long time.
For sure.
But it wasn't in our roadmap. No, not
well,
at all.
The level at which now it can operate and be available to almost anyone creates new opportunities that to once again dominate through details that weren't available to us even at a more micro scale. Like what you've done with Real Real is so legitimate, right? Like you're dealing, like you said, 800,000 SKUs at a time. This is now a multi-billion-dollar company valuation, and is here to stay. And it's really created a whole genre in resale that is so valuable to the world. I can only imagine how, an entrepreneur with a bright idea, even in a smaller realm, can kind of utilize the framework that you've built to think about how can I take even something more niche, let's say, maybe not even something as grand, and create, whether it be a database to support a pricing model like you described, or some other kind of highly systematized process that gives me a competitive advantage that allows me to dominate everyone else who's playing at the kind of big and dumb level, like obviously pawn shops, or, to get crass about it,
Yeah.
or,
Oh,
the
yeah.
individual boutique is kind of the localized big dumb way to do what the Real Real is doing now on a massive scale. And
Right.
I think
No,
those
I mean,
opportunities are
and
available.
but can we talk about your stores?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, because we opened stores while I was there. Because I want to know why because you didn't start that way, did you, or did you start that
Actually,
way?
so Lovesac's really backwards to like everything we're observing in business today. We sort of started with, I mean, in the earliest days, it was my side hustle in college, making giant beanbags and delivering them. But very early, we opened a store in Salt Lake City, Utah, on a wing and a prayer, because
Were you
all
in
of the
school there?
retailers.
Were you in school
Yeah, I was in
there?
school at
Okay.
the University of
Okay.
Utah,
Okay.
and all the retailers rejected me because they had Pottery Barn and Abercrombie and Fitch. Like, what's Lovesac? And so the malls had rejected us. The retail stores had rejected us. Furniture stores didn't take us seriously. But finally, one mall called us back, let us have a space on a temp basis, and we crushed. Who knew? But we came up the hard way in retail and actually made the pivot to go online more as the leading edge back at this when we were observing the whole revolution around 2015, like Warby Parker, Casper, all of this direct consumer. We said, oh my gosh, we have the couch built for that model. So we kind of did this reverse pivot from a traditional retailer into online first, with showrooms to support, like, hey, go in and try the product. And today that's how we operate. And so Lovesac's had this big, strange evolution, and then most recently pivoted into resale. And we're just barely dipping our toe in the water there, because ironically, no other furniture can really do what ours does. It's kind of gross. Like, furniture gets old and gross. Ours can be refreshed, be recovered, And so we have this unique opportunity. As one person said it to me the other day, you're going to have like the only used car dealership,
Oh, that's funny.
the only whatever brand of car that has used as an option in our world. And so I'm really proud to kind of stand on the shoulders and the groundwork that you've laid to even think this way. But it's
So,
hard.
the business is hard. It's hard. I mean, I always think it's fun, it's thrilling, but it's not easy. And especially, I mean, to be successful, it's not easy. You have to be on
Yeah.
it all the time. But here's an interesting thing, and I'm going to speak this week at somebody's corporate event. I am so disappointed with the way e-commerce has evolved. And I'll tell
Mm,
you why. And it gets back to your AI, and it gets back to blending brick and mortar and e-commerce, which is absolutely the winning formula.
yeah.
I mean, the fact that you have these stores for people to experience it, and then they can go and order on this, it's brilliant. And the Real Real was supercharged. As soon as we opened our first store in Soho, it lifted our New York sales, and it lifted the number of consignments.
Yeah.
Because remember, we don't manufacture anything. The company doesn't manufacture anything. I've left there. I can't keep saying we. So consequently, you always have to get more product in. Both went up. Now, I started in e-commerce. I was just going through this. It's sort of hard to think about this, but Yahoo didn't launch until 1994. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Google launched in 1997. Amazon launched in 1997. I started in e-commerce in 1998.
Yeah.
So I've been doing it a long time. And the Real I started in 2011. The tools for helping the shopper are so bad online. They're like circa 1999. And you've got search. The search has gotten better. You get search and you get filters. That's it. I mean, you get, you may also like, which I never like, you may also like. They're not using AI there. And the stores that do, and the Real is an exception. I'll tell you how we did it. But the stores that you can't filter for what's in the store with what you see online.
Mhm.
So I have called more high-end boutiques and I'll say, I'm looking at your website. Can I come try this on in the store? And they'll say, we don't have it in the store. I'm like, well, can you bring it into the store? They're like, well, we can ship it to your house. I'm like, I can ship it to my house.
Yeah.
I want to come into the store. And first of all, it takes them forever to check, which is wrong, right? So no one is actually, now the Real, because you only have one SKU, we have to know where that SKU is all the time. So if it's in a retail store, we have to know. And when it sells, it has to be taken off the website. The website is
Mm.
always displaying it. But it may also be in the LA store or the Soho store or the Madison Street store. So you have to have that one SKU tied to multiple ways of purchasing, and you always know where it is and you always know when it sells. And it's not that hard to do. And yet I don't know of one retailer that's doing it smartly. And how many places do you shop, Shawn? Like, do you shop online? 5? A lot of people, the younger people are shopping 39 places now.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that. I mean, I'm also into strange things like old cars that demand all kinds of strange websites to buy things from. But yeah, I mean, at least a dozen or so.
And you probably are a repeat customer.
Yeah, big time.
And I bet you if it's a clothing store, you're probably buying the same size. You probably go there to look at things.
Yeah,
Have you're still filtering probably.
still filtering.
I'd love to get up there and just talk on my phone. I'm looking for a size. I'm back. Show me, show me black boots in my size.
Yeah,
And similar to what I bought in the past. Never, I mean, this should happen. I shouldn't have to filter, look, call. It's ridiculous. It
yeah,
is
it's crazy.
ridiculous. Let's just even go with DoorDash. I'm a DoorDash lover now that I'm in New York. I would say 40% of the time, the product that's listed on the site or even Instacart's not available in the store.
Hmm.
So that makes me not want to use a delivery service because they're unreliable. I don't, and then you have to check your preferences. I'm always like, no, refund me. But it's a fascinating thing. We're at this point where e-commerce, the ability to shop online should be moving forward so aggressively, starting with your repeat customers, which is where you make your money anyway. You don't, your margins may have been good enough to make it on your first customer, but the Real needed that repeat business that usually we didn't start making money till the second order.
Hmm.
So you need that second order. I think when I was there, the repeat rate was something like 83%, really, really high.
Yeah,
But you needed that. That was how you got your leverage in the business, because you're not going to get leverage by bringing in more product because every product's unique. You're going to get leverage through technology and repeat business. But I'm so disappointed that people aren't leveraging AI to help people shop and make smarter decisions and know your repeat customers. Because I hate to say it, I'm sort of boring on what I buy, but I'm consistent. And I wouldn't mind getting a few wild hairs in there just to get me going. But it's not happening. We're still living in like 1999 e-commerce ways, and it's not really going to work now. The e-commerce slash retailer that embraces AI and learns how to treat and start with the repeat, because it's easier when you have data. You can also profile incoming customers, but it's so much easier to cut your teeth on the repeat. If people start winning on that, it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
Absolute game changer for them. I haven't seen anyone do it and not even thinking about it properly.
Well, the part that I love about everything that you're sharing with your wealth of wisdom in e-commerce. I mean, for those that don't know, I mean, you have been a name on the front page of e-commerce since pets.com, which was like a poster child.
I know. Well, that wasn't a good one, but I
No, but it
also
doesn't matter. You've been in
but
the game.
I
You've
have
been in the game since.
before pets, though, I ran a company called real.com, which was this is a funny story. It was the first site. I wasn't the founder. It was the first site to sell movies online. And that was 1997. It started, I think, before I got there. It might have started in 1996. And it literally, we sold tapes and then we moved big change DVDs. So we were selling movies, competing with Blockbuster and Hollywood Video, mostly Blockbuster, and I got the business up to about 50 million. Then Hollywood Video, who went defunct in 2010, paid $100 million for that business, bought
Wow.
that business, and with the goal of shutting it down.
Oh my gosh.
He was going to stop the internet. And then,
Oh
you
my
know who
gosh.
was just getting started right then? Reed with Netflix.
Yeah.
He placed a call and he's like, how long do I have before they come after me? I said, I don't know, 20 years. They were all about protecting their brick and mortar
That's
business. I
crazy.
know. I
The
know.
thing I love about your observations is that they're a glaring uh, indication that there is just ample room for innovation out there. You know, I think it's easy
Ah,
for entrepreneurs listening to feel like, oh my gosh, it's all been done. Even Real was done. You know, reset, like all these complex and amazing innovations of our day. And here you are as an internet entrepreneur that's been involved in the internet from the earliest days till right now. You know, you're building another company, which is fantastic. We'll get into in a minute. And just through your own just observations as a consumer. So here you are speaking just as a shopper
right.
about all of the pain points that annoy you as a shopper. And I'm constantly preaching this to my own design team. There is nothing wrong with designing for yourself. Like as you describe your pain points, you're describing a company that could exist to satisfy those pain points. And if
Absolutely.
you had the bandwidth and energy and time, then and others listening might think, "Oh no, you know, I can't beat Julie. Like, oh my gosh, she's got the money. She's By the way, you don't have the time or energy because you're building a nutrition company now." And so here you are just giving someone the blueprint. But look what it's based on. It's based on what you want. And I think sometimes we're stuck thinking, well, I need to have an idea that, you know, is bigger than me. Like, oh, I'm just weird. I'm the only one that want. If you want something and if you have a pain point, it's likely that 100,000 or a million others also do.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think AI opens up opportunities for everyone once again. And we're in a rough time in the retail world right now and commerce world, at least fashion is. But I think overall retail
Yeah.
sales are down. The consumer's not spending. That doesn't mean they don't want to spend. And that doesn't mean they're not looking. So the key is how do you get them when they are going to make a purchase? How do you get them to look at your site and actually transact? And you've got to leverage technology and AI. You absolutely have to. You still have to have humans in there because it's really annoying to get a chat bot that is dumb,
Yeah.
but a chat bot, but a really cool sales assistant that recognizes me when I come in and has a dressing room full of things I might like based on my size and color preferences and then some other things that could be automated with a real person stepping in. It's possible. It's not that hard now. So people have to think differently and create differently. I think everything's been opened up and I think it is going to be a rough ride for a few years here, maybe I hope not longer. But people will win during that time. And they're not going to win by doing what they did before. And the worst thing you can do is get into a discounting war where you're constantly lowering your prices, which is going to get hard with the tariffs anyway. So it's like you don't want to do that. So what are you going to do? You're going to differentiate on making the customer happier than they've ever been. And you start with your repeats, and you've also got to take care of your new customers. And then back to the whole theme of details. I mean, we had to retrain our sales staff regularly. And, salespeople, I think that we didn't have a great track record there. I think our turnover was probably 13 months. So, keeping them engaged, not the top salespeople, they were there, but the general people that was sort of, they drop in, drop out. So keeping them engaged, making sure they have product knowledge, making sure they're greeting people when they come in. When I was there, I used to stand, especially during COVID lines, I would go out and stand in those COVID lines, and no one knew it was me because I'd have a hat on. It was cold out. And I would stand out there and watch how we treated the customers. And because it was a weird time anyway. So were we offering them some, because, we had hot chocolate then. Were we offering them hot chocolate? Were we making sure they were okay when they walked in the store? Were they making them feel safe? And anything you can do that are small things will have a huge difference in your business now. And I think people have to embrace it. It's not a time you can't rest. You have
Yeah.
to think. You really have to put the customer front and center and use technology. There are so many opportunities right now. I don't know if they told you, but I wrote a book. It's coming out in June. But I break down some people that took really simple ideas and made a huge business of it. I mean, I think of the Real Real as a simple idea. I made a huge business. But I have one for you that's crazy. This is crazy, but it might be good for your listeners. There's a
Yeah.
woman
Well,
named.
hold on real quick. Let's talk about the book.
Oh,
So
okay.
we don't
All
pass
right.
it. And then I want to hear about that. So tell us real quick, because it's coming out this summer,
Yeah, June 9th.
June 9th. And just give us the quick overview.
It's called Time to Get Real. And I wrote the story of how I created the Real Real. But I write it year by year. So I'm like taking you on the ride
It's awesome.
it's really, I mean, it's weird writing a book, first of all. I
Yeah.
just want to put that out there because everything you do in technology and technology enabled companies is collaborative. When you write a book, you're just sitting there writing it. And then you're like, uh-oh, is anyone going to read this? Who's this book for? And I had an agent and I had a publisher, and they were like, no, you can't share this book and get feedback. It's got to be your voice. It's got to be true. We think it's going to do well. So I have no idea because there's only been about 14 people that have read it, but I think it's great for business people and entrepreneurs, but it is a female entrepreneur's journey. And it takes you from, I had to do a little bit of background on my life before it because they made me put that part in. What I wanted to do was start with, here's how I was thinking about the Real Real. Here's how I got the idea. And then I take you year by year until I leave and pull out key things. So there's learnings along the way, but they're not like, and here are the 5 things I learned. There's just things I learned, and you're learning them when you're reading it as I'm learning them.
I love it.
So that's the book. But one of the things, the Real Real did create a new category. You created a new category. You did the same thing. But the one that I just love because it's so simple, and this blows my mind. There's a woman named Anastasia Sorie who actually made $1 billion business, that's with the B, out of making eyebrows important on your face.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody had eyebrow products in the makeup business. She's like, no, I'm going to be the eyebrow queen. I'm going to show you how to make the best eyebrows possible. And then I'm going to give you the products I use to make beautiful eyebrows. And think about that. That is insane. So there are so many of those ideas still out there. I even think of Martha Stewart. She made entertaining $1 billion business. It was sort of there hovering. And she's like, no, I'm going to give you an aspirational life here and show you how to make entertain like I do and make it easy for you. And so it was, so to me, when, you created a category, your business didn't exist. You said the same thing happened with the Real Real, by the way. No retailer wanted us. No landlord wanted us because they kept saying, we don't want a pawn shop. We don't want a resale business. We had anyway, we finally found a place. But you created a whole new category, and it was a simple concept.
Yeah, I think, look, I think both examples should be motivation for anyone listening, that even though it feels like everything's been done, here's the great part about something like AI. It's just like the internet. It's a whole new layer now. Everything can be redone. You're telling me that pet stores didn't exist before pets.com. You're telling me that, to go all the way back, right? You're telling me
Yeah.
that pawn shops, or take your pick, resale shops didn't exist before Real. Look, you're telling me that you just gave the example of Netflix. You're
Right.
telling me that video stores didn't exist before Netflix. Like, with these new technology layers, everything that you see can be reinvented, and you can choose to captain that ship, even if you're not an AI expert. In fact, I'm curious. You got involved in the internet very early.
Right.
Did you study computer
No,
programming?
no.
Did you?
Oh, I did a little bit because I went to Purdue. But
Okay.
here's what happened. I started at Clorox in brand management, and I was lucky. They hired me as an undergraduate. They only hired one other person as an undergraduate. And when I was there, you had to hand crank those P&Ls. You had
Yeah.
to do what if this happens? What if that happens? What if someone introduces a generic in the city of Fort Wayne? Then what happens? And so it would take hours. You'd have a room, an 8x10 room full of papered what ifs.
Hmm.
A guy in the finance department, he literally smuggled in an Apple II computer,
Hmm.
and he ran VisiCalc. And he's like, watch this. And I'm like, this is the future. This is a game changer. And so then my former boss's wife, my former boss left Clorox, and then his wife got in touch with me. She goes, I just joined a software company in Silicon Valley, and we're doing really cool things. It's personal software. I want you to work in product management. I didn't even care what it did. I just said, I'm in. I'm going to come down. And so I resigned Clorox after being there about almost 3 years. I'd been promoted once. I went into the general manager's office and I said, I'm going to leave and join the software company. And he's like, I can raise the price of bleach a half a cent and make more money than that company will ever make. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay. So it was a small company called Software Publishing that was doing personal software and personal computer software. And it was one of 3 or 4. Their big claim was a company called a product called Harvard Graphics. That was the precursor to PowerPoint. So basically, Microsoft wasn't really an innovator. They were people that copied on the application. So Microsoft bought a product that copied Harvard Graphics called Power, and then made PowerPoint, and then killed the rest of the industry. But we went public. We got up to about 500 million. And I ended up running international for them, which is enough in my 20s. But I knew right then and there that that was the future. And the other thing is, when I looked above me at Clorox, they weren't my people. There was, here I am,
Yeah.
like, full of life, and there was innovation. It's not fair to say there wasn't innovation, but there were no women above me. All the women were in HR. And you sort of and then it was one of those things, like, every time you get promoted, the pyramid gets more and more narrow. And I'm like, well, I don't know. It felt like you had to compete not with the business, but with your fellow worker to get on top. And
What I think is useful, though, as I listen to you talk about your history and what you describe for anyone listening, is, again, our topic, dominate through details. As I listen to you speak to the real and your experience as CEO there, or business as it lies now, you've thrown out endless facts and figures. You've quoted different, margins, percent levels, customer data. You are an example. It's easy for people to I don't know, observe CEOs or founders and think, oh, they're just wild entrepreneurs with crazy ideas. You knew how to crank spreadsheets by hand. You then learned how to do it in Excel. You then learned how to build PowerPoints to go do what you were doing in early tech. What's my point? I am easily perceived as, oh, this beanbag kid has side hustle in college, made big beanbags. I took accounting. I took economics. I was trying to reconcile our credit card, you know, uh, nightly feed from like Amex from our register in our first Lovesac store by hand. And by doing so, by the way, I learned my way through a P&L. I have to this day, as almost $1 billion in sales company, I have an appreciation and empathy for my accounting team as a public company that I would not have if I didn't at least expose myself to that level of detail. And not everyone around me necessarily does, but I'm a big believer in that. So I think it's really cool that you understand the real at a database level, that you understand your customers at a stand-in line at the store level, that you understand what's going on in business from a macro level. And I'm seeing these connections that you've made on this podcast with AI, but being able to be facile enough to know how you could convert that to a business if only you had the time. And that's the difference, I think, between, I think a CEO or a founder that can really scale something and someone who just has wild ideas and is willing to throw money at them. And I just really respect you to that end. And I don't know that necessarily you even recognize it for that, but I recognize it for that. And that's another way that you dominate through details.
But I do think, thank you, by the way, that's really something. But I really think this is why I love founders that are running their business, because you learn so much. You're a different league of person than, first of all, you are probably a little crazy, because you have to be a little crazy
Sure.
to start a company. You have to take a big bet on yourself, but you do have to do everything at the beginning. There's no, and you're on this incredible learning curve that's phenomenal. And the more you know, the more you can make the right decisions for the business. And I think the hardest thing I had when I was at the Real is bringing in people who weren't curious about the other parts of the business. And maybe, and I would say even worse than that, had a formula, like, well, this is how I do things. It's like, but that's not necessarily going to work here.
Yeah.
They came in and they wanted to skim on the top, and you need to get to affect change in any business. You need to understand the key metrics of that business, which means you have to go deep. You can't just scoot along and shine up, not in a fast growing business. So that, but I do love founders for that. I think it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, and it's the most rewarding thing you'll ever
Absolutely.
do.
And you're just a good example. I think that it's easy for people on the outside to watch the movies or, see some Instagram clips and mistake, because there are examples of people who just sort of get lucky or just sort of have something go viral or whatever. But you're an example of someone who's really focused on the details, has put in the time and effort, and has built so many great things, and is now building another business in the nutrition space.
Yes, we've got it out there. It's personalized nutrition. I don't want to spend too much time talking about, because there's potential interest in the company right now.
Okay.
Let me tell you that the premise. The premise was that if an algorithm, again, should be able to analyze what you tell it, so it's self-reported data, including any medical information, any medicine that you're on, basic health issues, but also what you eat, and then give you your own personal algorithm for what nutrients your body needs that you may be missing in your diet for optimal health. So that's the premise, and it works. And it was all some of the top nutrition minds came together to inform this algorithm. So if you took the survey and I took it, we would have different optimal foods, most likely, different nutrients we may be missing in our diet, and then also what the symptoms are related to that nutrient and what the long-term impact of not getting that nutrient in your body is, and then tie it to recipes if you cook. and then
Wow.
integrated all the way to Instacart. So it's pretty darn sophisticated. It works. It's all based on science. It's heavy science. I mean, I believe in the whole premise of the company is based on food first. Hopefully, food first, medicine second, and supplements third, or supplements second, medicine third. Supplements are tricky because they can have a lot of bad things in them. In fact, we just had a call this morning about AG1 turns out they've had to make an announcement. They have a lot of lead in their product.
Interesting.
And so, you want to watch out for supplements. It really is food first. Get your nutrients from food first. And it works. It's cool. And I would say that the only thing I didn't take into consideration, because we've done so much user testing, and we have over 10,000 users, probably 12 now. Not a lot, but not bad. But TikTok has a negative influence on nutrition and health. So we didn't take into account the younger generation getting their health information from TikTok and their nutrition information, but people that are more serious about it are embracing it. So that's good.
Well, look, here you have waxed in detail and in long form on so many different topics. You are the meta example of dominating through details, the real deal. Everyone be sure to follow Julie on Instagram as I do, Real Julie, at Real Julie, and stay up to date on everything Real related on, of course, the Real Twitter account, X account, but also with Julie's new book coming out this summer, Time to Get Real, How I Built a $1 billion business that rocked the fashion industry. It's out June 10th. Thank you so much to the female founder, the unfiltered inspiration, the expert of e-commerce, the realist of the real herself, Ms. Julie Wainwright.
Oh my goodness, Shawn, it's been an honor. Like I said, I was a customer before I knew who you were.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Part of the Lovesac family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still a member. And remember, to all those out there, that some things may seem small or insignificant, nothing to obsess over in the moment, but it's those smallest details that make the biggest difference. So learn how to dominate through details, as Julie laid out for us. It might just save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Thank you.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.